Good afternoon, everybody. I almost said good morning. Thank God I realized that super quick. Just going to give everybody a few minutes to jump in. You'll notice we have a slew of questions already in the queue in the Ask a Question. So you have two things that you can do. You can go in there and add a question if there was something specific today that you were hoping to get an answer from or wanted us to maybe just do a quick brainstorm on something specific for your business. Or you can go in there and take a look at the questions that are already sitting in the queue, and you can actually vote for any of them that you're like, that's totally relevant to me. And what happens on our end is it actually promotes the question, so we talk about it sooner and can make sure that we're staying on topic for those of you who are joining us live. How is everybody doing today? Is that a happy dance? Is that a stretch?
That's a happy dance. I mean, this morning sucked when I woke up. I don't know what it was today about. What was that? My question.
Rob is already started. Here we go. If anybody hasn't noticed in all of our past sessions, Rob likes to instigate in the comment in hopes of maybe Jimmy Falloning us and making us crack while we're here. So if ever you see us trying to keep a straight face and there's a smirk, there's a high likelihood that Rob's behind it. Hey, Josh, how are you?
I think today started off as a terrible day. I don't know. I guess I don't know what the weather was like everywhere else. I'm about 10 minutes north of Kingston, like just before we hit Frontenac, and we had the biggest snowflakes I've ever seen. Like, seriously flying, frisbees. And I did feel like that just put me in like a terrible mood to start the day. I was just like gloomy. It was like a dark cloud. And so, but I mean, I don't know. You got to find ways to motivate yourself right now, right? And get some work done and choose things that are positive to work on. And so that's what I did today.
Was the snow sticking to the ground at your house?
Yeah, I was sticking. It's pretty much all melted now, but yeah, it stuck around for a bit. It was.
I know. I had posted a story on my Instagram, and someone from Kingston was like, "It's actually staying on the ground," and I'm like, "Oh yeah, when you live out in the country, we're a little bit cooler out this way than you are in town."
Not a giant lake keeping us warm, right?
Exactly. So I'll just repeat myself. We have a slew of questions here in the Ask a Question section at the bottom of your screen. If you want to go and take a look at what's in the queue, you can upvote them or you can add your own question. We're going to do our best to cover everything today and hopefully help some people that are here live with us directly with some of the struggles or some of the blocks that they're having. All right, so if we jump in super quick, and we're just kind of winging this, so be patient with us as we bring people in and out of the room that could kind of contribute to answering some of these or that have something that they wanted to talk about as well. Most of these are actually questions that I've been receiving in DMs from clients and from people that are just kind of. So you're going to see that a lot of these I've plugged them in here, but it's a lot of the stuff that I'm hearing on the ground. So we've got first, I'm an artist and I'm struggling to find the inspiration to keep being creative as I feel like right now, art is not essential. Ooh, this is good. I feel like John could maybe chime in on this one. I actually remember, see, John's already saying, let me in. It's so interesting because I think a lot of this is about perspective. When I first realized that I needed to set up a space, which ended up being a corner in my bedroom, to be honest with you, for working from home, the first thing I did was grab 2 plants and grabbed 2 paintings from local artists and was like, okay, this is life. There's color. It brings me energy and it kind of inspires me. And it's really interesting how it was almost like my first instinct was to make sure that I had some creative things around me. So to hear from an artist's perspective that they're not seeing it from that way was actually really heartbreaking for me. And I did quite a bit of back and forth with this person in particular and totally understood where she was coming from, because it was like, I don't even want to paint right now. She's a fine artist. So I really understand where she's coming from, because like a lot of us didn't know how to move and didn't know how to talk on social media at the beginning. For her, it's like this creative block when her business essentially is a creative business. I can appreciate the way that she was feeling about that.
I think, there's a balance right now, right? Which is the creation of art is hard. It's hard to find inspiration and depending on how you approach your art, right? It can be challenging to find inspiration if you are a fine artist. But I think the thing that I've seen so far, sort of through this first, 3 or 4 weeks, is that everyone is turning to art forms, right? Where do you go for your entertainment and for your escape and for your anything really, right? Like, it's the amount of musicians I've seen sharing music and doing music lessons via Instagram Live, or something along those lines, or actors, or late night TV show hosts doing Zoom doing their interviews and doing their shows and their monologues through whatever means they can, right? Like, I think it's so important to have the perspective of artists and to have that creation ongoing, because it's how human beings have shared culture for millennia, right? It's through art, and it's through that creation of artists, and the historical artifacts that exist are all artistic creations from different generations. And so I think finding inspiration is likely a challenge and will be an ongoing challenge, but I think the need for art is probably the highest it's been in my lifetime. Like, this is the most important time for artists to be creating and sharing that perspective.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I'm hearing super feedback. Oh well. Greg, you said it. It's 100% essential. Man, this is hard. Is there any way to fix this?
We can't hear feedback, so if you just want to talk over it, you're good.
Okay. Art is all about perspective. And right now, I realize that it's harder, but you have to choose to see the things that matter and choose to feel. When you're going through crisis, and I know there's limitation in terms of being able to get out, go to see parks, wildlife, things that might inspire you. These inspire me. Now there's a chance to even more so choose to see family, choose to see rest, right? People are receiving rest. The earth is receiving rest. To choose to see love the way that people are connecting, and they just didn't in the same way before. To choose to see unity. Even our government in Canada is very unified compared to what I've seen before. To see beauty in the details. I think when you can get past fear and our gut reaction to what's going on, that comes alive and it's actually more beautiful. And hopefully as artists, we can get through it and express it and communicate it to those to help them get through it. If I'm talking weird, I'm sorry, because I just keep hearing myself super loud.
You're good. I'm not having any issues anyway. I also think this is an opportunity for artists. And when I say artists, I'm talking like Melissa mentioning over here is I'm not just talking fine arts. I'm also talking about, like Braden mentioned, music and stuff. I also think it's an outlet. So for somebody who's in business and it's 100% structure and kind of keeping things super simple, grabbing a paintbrush and a canvas and whatever the hell you can get your hands on, I think is an opportunity for you to release too. And maybe at the end of the day, your painting is not going to be the greatest, but somebody else may feel that it is and may connect with that is. So I think it's important to continue to create, or in her case, I think it's important to relocate that passion and to focus on how she can kind of get back into it. Starting to hear too, which has been really nice, is some of these benefits are starting to look at the gig economy. So opportunities for these people to also get subsidies. So that's been some positive news in the last couple of days. And on that note, I just got off a call with Frontenac County. I haven't seen it firsthand, but apparently you're now allowed to make, or they're making adjustments to CERB that you can actually make $500 a week and still collect what that looks like. So when that information becomes available, we'll make sure that we share that. But yeah, I agree with everybody here in the comments section. We've got a great conversation going. It really is important to refine that spark and to relight whatever that may be. That's a great question. Thank you. Did anybody else want to chime in on that one? All right, let's move on to the next question. Has anyone heard what's happening for the small businesses that do not have a $50,000 payroll? Braden, I'm going to ask you to chime in on this one. It seems that medium and large businesses have some help, but nothing for the small businesses with few or no employees. Did you want to talk a little bit about some of the news that you had shared with us earlier today?
Well, I can talk. I mean, I can talk about the other side of this. Because I am a business that has an over $50,000 payroll. So there's the emergency bank account that was announced. So it's like a $40,000 loan that basically I have until the end of the year to dip into it. It acts as like a line of credit. And so I can dip into it up to $40,000, and then it closes on the 31st of this year. So December 31, 2020. And then starting on January 1st, whatever the balance is in that account, it acts as a 2-year repayable loan with 0 interest. And then if from the way it was worded so far is if I have 30,000 of it paid off by the end of 2022, then the remaining $10,000 is forgiven. So it acts more like a grant. So that portal, so we do our commercial banking with RBC. So that portal opened for us today there. And then I do my personal banking with TD, and I got an email from them that their portal was also open. So I'm assuming now the major banks have that in place. I personally haven't seen anything yet. If you're like a corporation with a payroll under $50,000, I haven't seen anything yet outside of like the $2,000 a month one. So yeah, and like if you are under 50,000, like Dave just said, there are ways to appeal it. I didn't see anything on my way going through it that there was an appeal option, but I haven't logged into my CRA account yet today, so I'm not sure if there's something there. And maybe I'm assuming Dave's probably done this as well today, so I'll invite Dave up too, because he'll probably have a perspective on this. Have you seen anything, John, on your end in terms of like subsidy on like the solopreneur side?
No, I mean, they're supposed to be updating some stuff soon, but that's all I've heard.
Yeah, and I mean, so, you know, as we were setting this up, there was the announcement from Trudeau where they were talking about there being, you know, this could take, you know, a year or 18 months before things go back to normal. And so I'm assuming that there's also going to be a lot of conversations in the coming weeks about, you know, what that means on a larger economic level. And, you know, my sort of thought around everything from the beginning was that all of these initial announcements, you know, even CERB and this emergency bank account and stuff like that, like everything was thought really short term, even though the professional health side of things and who were saying this could be around a lot longer. And so, you know, I'm going to be interested to see how all of the philosophies on the economic scale start to change as people start to look at this as, you know, not something that will be done in the next few months, but, you know, how do we plan for, you know, 6 months or 12 months or 18 months when things can kind of get back to normal.
Right. And I think it was during yesterday's call, Justin Trudeau was saying how they focused on the programs that would have the largest impact on the most amount of people. So they do realize that they've left some people out. We're talking about students. Today there was an announcement for a wage subsidy for the summer jobs program where they're covering 100% of the student wages. That makes me a little nervous because then people may hire students instead of hiring their staff back, which is kind of scary, but I kind of understand it coming from both ends. So I think it'll be interesting to navigate moving forward in terms of what's moving forward. Dave, what are you experiencing?
Well, my wife and I are both business owners, and so she applied. Obviously, the application process. I apologize if I mess up the acronyms, but the CERB, which is the distribution of the 2000 started Monday, and it was by birthday, and so she applied on Monday with very few questions and was funded by Wednesday. So that's the immediate relief. The 2000 looks like it's just flowing, and even I just noticed that it said if you received it twice, it wasn't an error. They're trying to distribute capital pretty simply. Now on the loan, the CEBA, I didn't technically qualify, so I'm navigating that, but I did just receive an email from my banker that basically said, if you don't qualify, then let's have a conversation. But then underneath it did say that there was an appeals section that's connected to the government, and I shared the link in the notes. Look like it's cebaquestions.ca. So some of those technical things are probably still going to need to be ironed out, but they certainly recognize that, you know, we're full of exceptions as a business owner. So I would say the bank's probably up for a conversation, and I think they've extended line of credits pretty loosely. On the corporate side, they did that for me. They added an extra $10,000 to my line of credit. They're freeing up payments on visas. So they're doing as much as they can. It looks like the resources are out there. And so, but it looks like there's some sort of appeal process that's happening with the government that you're going to have to walk through a little bit. So
that's good to hear. A little bit of conversation going in on the right here if everybody wants to kind of keep up, and if anybody has any other questions about that, although none of us are experts in that area. Some of us have applied, and it's like Dave said, I'll echo what you just said. The application process, it has been very simple, almost feels like it's too good to be true, and the money's being deposited right away for people.
Yeah, and it seems to be changing every day. Like, I keep checking in, and like, I have not qualified, and now it seems like I might qualify for a certain amount of time that's been backdated. So yeah, keep looking into that, and they have said they're aware of that market, and they're looking to make those changes.
Yeah, one thing that I've noticed online, and I don't want to target anybody specifically, but I've seen it quite a few times, is you're seeing people actually making posts about shutting their online business and no longer accepting income. Really, they're not selling. I worry a little bit about that. If ever there are audits and you intentionally closed down and weren't really kind of part of that whole essential and non-essential. So for like someone like me, if I was selling a product and I voluntarily shut down so that I could qualify for CERB, I do have some concerns about that, and I could be totally wrong on that. But I would just be careful in terms of what you post, because if the CRA is going to try to claw back some of this money, I have no doubt that there will be some audits and that they will be issuing invoices for repayment for anybody that may not have been eligible or that did something that made you not qualify for that. So I just want to caution everybody on that. All right, moving on. With today's very vague announcement from the Prime Minister about not returning to normalcy until there is a vaccine, which could be up to 18 months from now, how will small businesses survive? I mean, Rob, if you want to ask such a difficult question, you should probably jump on screen here and chime in. Very valid question. A lot of people are thinking that, and we were having a bit of a sidebar conversation before we jumped on here, and it's true. People are now going to immediately think, like, what's the point? Why don't I just cave now and worry about this on the other end and figure it out when we get there?
I was asking because I don't know. Like,
I don't know if any of us do.
I was just watching or reading the article. I haven't watched the video or anything like that. And from what I could tell, it was pretty vague how he was talking. You know, I don't know, like, do they expect the social distancing in businesses to be shut for a year and a half? Like, I just don't see how that's even possible. You know, like,
yeah,
short term, even long term though. Think about, like, all the businesses that won't make it through this, the ones that had hope that this was only going to last a few months, and now they're thinking it's going to be a year and a half, so they're going to be like, well, what's the point? Where are all those people that used to work at those businesses going to work in a year and a half from now? Like I said, I mean, I don't have any answers to that. It's just, as a viewer and a reader of the article, I'm thinking to myself, what the F? Like,
Yeah, and I think that's fair. I think it's, for me, I mean, again, I didn't watch it and I haven't read the article either, but I feel like it's fear based also. It's going to instill a lot of fear in people, and people are going to start reacting to that. So I agree with you. It is a very scary statement.
I think, honestly, Melissa and I have been talking a little bit on the side about this, and she has some really good points. She might be somebody worthwhile jumping on this part too.
Yeah, she does.
Yeah,
She's got
read
some
her.
fear.
Read her note in the chat there, because that's how I've understood how this is likely going to come back. Like, it's unrealistic to think that it's going to reach a point where, okay, we're fixed, everyone's back to normal. Like, it's going to come in waves. I just think from running a business perspective, you got to think, like, yeah, there's a time to think defense, and I think we're through that in a way that we've mitigated as much risk as we can at this point. But then you got to think offense. Right? Like, this is a situation, how can I make this succeed? And I just think it's dangerous to consider. Now, it's hard because I'm thinking from my scenario, and I can't speak for everybody because I don't know every circumstance, but to consider how can I mitigate my income so that I qualify, it's just, yeah, I would push forward and think about how you can grow. Not only is that integrity, but it's also, I think there's a lot more opportunity than we realize. And that support is there to help us through it, but I just don't think we try to qualify for more support, if that makes sense.
That's kind of how we're doing it too, because I spoke to Jada from CFIB, and in my situation, because I don't have employees of up to $50,000, I don't qualify for basically anything. So she said, you've got to decide, is the $2,000 a month going to be enough, or will you make more than $2,000 if you keep going forward? And I've decided for now anyway, we're going to keep going, because I've been fortunate enough that I still have people that want our services and our products, and we're just going to keep going as long as we possibly can. But again, you're right. I mean, everybody's circumstance is going to be different.
Right. And you will still be able to tap into that $2,000 down the road if you have to, and still potentially collect the maximum amount. I feel like there's also some reading between the lines in the 16-week piece, because I kind of feel like the government may come back and say, well, we gave you 16 weeks to figure out your situation. Now you're kind of on your own. I don't know if there will be something after this, if this does go on longer than that. You want to bring Melissa in?
I'll say one more thing and you can kick me out, but it's very much, I think we all need that mentality, right? We need the mentality of let's push on and let's work towards something better, as opposed to there's support available, let's all tap into as much as we can before it's gone, because that doesn't benefit us, right? And I think mentality and drive is important. And in that, we can support each other moving forward, even if we don't know how.
Totally agree.
Okay, I'm going to kick John out and bring Melissa in. Yeah, I mean, I think from my perspective, like, you know, from a health side of things, there's no short solution to this. There's no quick answer to, you know, how do you contain an extremely contagious virus. And so, you know, I think the broader questions are, you know, there's some interesting things around how some people are funding vaccine research and things like that. But I was reading an article the other day, which is like, we can't go back to, 6 weeks ago normal until the world is vaccinated, right? Like, it's not just one country or one population thing. It's a global thing. And so I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting questions and explorations and a lot of ethics questions and a lot of, different explorations around, what does it mean for people? My business is one that's sort of interesting, from a perspective that, we do like micro crew documentary work. So like, I can go and film it almost any business in the world. And I can do it with a crew of 2 if I have to. I mean, half the stuff we shoot is just myself and Brody. And we go all over the world and do it. So, it'll be interesting to see where does that social distancing and where does that threshold cross with us in terms of being an essential business or with, being safe around a group of people, and what are going to be the health protocols and things like that around being able to have, whether it's large groups of people or just groups of people who aren't from the same place being able to move and be in one room again. Melissa?
Yeah. I I don't really know how to react necessarily to JT's announcement this morning. It's kind of scary because I think it does really freak out a lot of small business owners. Like, I can speak for myself. I've talked to a few owners and they were basically on the path of like, okay, like we can do this until about July, and that's about it. But beyond July is when it starts to get scary, and I don't know. I have so many thoughts about it because I think right now people are kind of panicking about the future. So everyone's trying to jump on to CERB. Not necessarily everyone in that situation, but for some people. So then people are closing their online stores and their services. But if we are actually going to be in this for a year, it's kind of scary to think about that. It's such a hard choice to make right now. Like, if you take that $2,000 a month, or if you should be kind of pivoting your business into something that can make you that money. Because the scary part still for me isn't this 1 year, it's what happens after that 1 year. Like, what do we come back to? And if we all just kind of stop doing our services, it's going to kind of be this mad race, I think, once we all reopen, because you kind of want to stay at the forefront of your customer's mind and like so many different traditional marketing things, but we also need to survive this pandemic. So I don't know. It's really hard. But even for us, like, if we can't reopen fully for another year, my fear is like, what does that mean for our temporary layoffs? Like, we're incorporated, so for us at least, we do have up to 1 calendar year to bring back our employees, but that won't be the case for everyone. So I'm curious to see if temporary layoff legislation changes, or like what will happen, because if it moves over to permanent layoffs, then we all have to pay severance out as well, which will be another swift punch to the gut financially for a bunch of businesses.
Well, and there are still programs that are still, like, we're waiting on details. Like, I haven't seen anything yet on the 75% wage subsidy, which is supposed to go from March 15 to June 15 initially. So like I'm interested in that one because that'll really affect how I move forward with myself, because so I'm a corporation, but I'm also an employee of the corporation instead of being a dividend, like paying myself in dividends. I pay myself a regular salary, and I pay like CPP and all that kind of stuff. And so, looking at how I handle myself, how I handle, the two that are on my team right now, I think, knowing how those programs are going to work are going to affect a lot of our decision making, right? Whether is it better to lay them off and to let them collect EI, because I think their EI payment will be better than what the CERB payment would be for them, or do we have that subsidy for 3 months and I keep everyone on and we keep working away like we are, right now, and continuing to do work? We've been lucky that we've had a handful of projects coming in and a handful of projects from before that have sort of carried over. But all of our production work is gone, right? We don't have anything to go and film anywhere. Like I said, despite being able to realistically do that in a safe and controlled manner, we could if we felt comfortable with it. And that also becomes the ethical question of, is it responsible to be moving around or to be filming things or to be going into other people's businesses and helping them try to promote their business by doing our work? There's a lot of questions there that I don't have answers to yet. And we've been trying to come up with some protocols and trying to see if there's anything out there in terms of, has any industry started to set what those standards are? There are a lot of businesses that are still operating, right? The 3Ms of the world and the manufacturers. I've been really, I don't know if anyone's been paying attention to it, but I've been paying pretty close attention to SnapCab here in town, and watching them get really creative with their pods, because they are oh yay. But they're trying to figure out how to retrofit the pods they already build to be like testing facilities, right? And so they're looking at like 3 different designs, and they're getting really creative with like, do you put a nurse or a health practitioner inside a box that has like a HEPA filter and an air conditioning unit and has like 2 holes cut out with gloves? You put your gloves through and you can do your testing from in there, and they're in a controlled environment. Or do you invert that where someone would walk into, the Memorial Center, like where Kingston's doing testing? You walk in there, you go into the pod, the health practitioner comes over, they can do what they need, so they're getting creative with stuff like that. So, but at the same time, their employees have to go into the shop, and they're doing their work, and, have to be paying attention to social distancing and what the safety requirements are. And, so I kind of see 2 ways of really going forward, which is like, one, there has to be a treatment or a vaccine where normalcy can be, where things can kind of go back to normal because we were able to treat it. And then the second is like massively widespread testing, right? Which is where like you can go and you can get tested, you can have results in 30 minutes or in an hour. And if you need to go travel, you can get a test right away, and then you go, okay, I'm fine, and you can move on. But until they're able to do 30 million tests a day, which is testing everyone in Canada, like there's no way to be able to move or be able to do things as normal until something like that is able to be implemented. So I think it's going to be really interesting to see what happens over the next couple of weeks, because if they're now thinking about really long-term outlooks on things and looking at 18 months from now, not just we'll be back to normal in June or July. There's a lot of industries in Kingston that are going to have a really hard time if they can't do anything in the summer, right? The amount of tourism and accommodation based organizations in Kingston, like that it's going to be pretty huge in our economy.
I think with the tourism industry, it's been really interesting talking to a bunch of small tourism operators, both in Kingston and ranging from Toronto to Ottawa. A lot of them are saying that this year, as of right now, is fully a complete write-off because they're not able to prepare for the tourism season, which typically kicks off in May for most people. So that means it's done. Like they're not even working on this year anymore, because even if they are able to open up in June or July, it doesn't give them enough time to be able to prepare for this season. So that's a bit unfortunate. I think maybe one of the main.
Sorry, I was just saying who's going to widely travel, right? Who if this lets up in August and say you can go somewhere for September, are there going to be enough people to justify the cost of opening? But I'd be this is all hypothetical, right? Because we're all in different industries, and I think everyone's also just kind of guessing. But I would be curious to know what insurance for tourism organizations and companies that are tourism based looks like, say, compared to my insurance, which is production based, compared to something like farming. Because farming is really interesting because they have crop insurance, right? So if they have a year that has horrible weather and they lose all of their cash crop or most of their cash crop, there are mechanisms in which they can level out their income for the year, and they it's all on curves and predictions and stuff like that, which is a different model. But I mean, from a conversation we had a couple weeks ago where Dave and I were talking about neither of our insurance helps us in any way right now, and my insurance is astronomically expensive, right? We pay almost $10,000 a year in insurance for a pretty small company, and there's no help for us from that, despite losing all of our income.
I don't think there's really going to be much help for many people that have insurance right now, because I think for a while people were trying to go after business interruption insurance, thinking that because we're shut down, it means that our businesses have been interrupted. But business interruption does not apply to situations like this. It's usually if there's a physical damage to your location, therefore you had to shut down. That's when business interruption insurance kicks in. I've talked to a few people who've kind of talked to their lawyers about what this looks like. And I think most people's lawyers are suggesting not to fight that battle. Don't try to go after your insurance company. Wait for someone with deeper pockets to go after them. Because if a huge, huge organization goes after an insurance company for business interruption insurance, then everyone else will reap the benefits of it, instead of you trying to drop 40 grand to sue your insurance company and not get anything out of it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I've talked to a few tourism businesses out my way in Frontenac County. Golf course says their grass has never been greener. They're still forging forward. We've got some campsites out here that are really reliant on snowbirds, and they're prepping with their fingers crossed. But like y'all said, there's nothing else they can do. Like, this is their core business. They need to be prepared if it does turn around. But there's not a lot of optimism right now, I don't think.
Well, should we move on to questions we can actually answer?
How to stay on track of business tasks. So this was actually a conversation that we had amongst ourselves. There are a lot of distractions right now. I mean, Rob, how do you not get distracted by social media? I mean, I think that's the biggest thing. And I think, Braden, that was something that you had mentioned too, is you kind of get sucked into this hole of endless scrolling. And then next thing you know, it's 2:00 in the afternoon and you want to shut down for the day.
I've never said that I don't get distracted by this. But no, realistically, I think for me, I've somehow found a balance between the two. I've been able to actually work them in together, but I have definitely found times where I have to set a timer on my phone. There was a program Braden mentioned, it might have been in the first episode or sometime, I don't even remember what it's called now, but it's that app that keeps you on track for like 25 minutes at a time. And I definitely used it like the next day and found that it was really helpful. I'm really horrible at continuing on with things, so I haven't used it since, but I definitely, when I find that we're not getting as much work done, it's on my phone ready to go. So I think it's one of those things. Right now, it's funny, actually, I read an article more relating to kids in school, but I think it applies to work right now too, is it's okay if you don't get something done right now. Like, this is times where it's uncharted territory. Nobody's ever dealt with this before. And adding the stress, I know myself, I put on huge amounts of stress on myself to finish timelines the best that I can. And to just take those off of myself and be like, okay, we can slow down and continue to work. But to take that one piece of stress away with all the other stresses that are on now, something's got to break somewhere. And this article just spoke about that, said, you know what? Uncharted times, take your time. If you sleep in, you sleep in. Like, if you work 4 hours instead of 8 hours one day, it's okay. And I truly do believe that too.
I think the thing I've been finding is, like, I read some really interesting articles on like the 5 stages of grief in relation to like a pandemic like this, right? When everyone's sort of in the same space and in the same world, there's sort of, there's 5 really common psychological patterns that you go through. There are 5 stages of grief, and the last 2, 4 is depression and 5 is acceptance. And the articles that I've been reading is, for the most part, until some normalcy starts to happen or you start to find a rhythm, we're going to naturally bounce between those 2 until we feel like we're in control. So I think, like I said at the beginning, like today was a hard day to get out of bed. The one thing I've really tried to fight for from myself, my productivity at work is probably 50%. But I've also, it's kind of crazy. It feels crazy some days, but I get up every day at 5 a.m. And I've made sure I've kept doing that. Rob says not him, but I made sure I keep doing that. And this week I've been a lot better. And this week I've also got up every day and I've worked out every morning at 5. And then I've been writing for an hour. And that's been really good to just sort of set up a day well, do a workout, write for an hour, make a coffee, kind of clear my mind before the rest of the family's awake. I think in general right now, it's all about setting yourself a couple of really simple goals for the day and, doing one of those, checking it off, walking away for a bit, take a break, clear your mind, spend some time with the kids or go for a walk or whatever it is, and then come back and get the next thing off. Because I found if I try to do too many things in a day, I get so little done because I just, rapidly jump back and forth between 5 tasks. And then I either do really bad work or I'm not getting enough done. And so I think that's one of the big things that I've found to be useful. I've been in and out of that Pomodoro timer that Rob was talking about, right? It's 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off for 4 sessions. And then it programs in like a 20-minute break at the end of that, because you can only really focus for about 4 hours with those. And so, I've had some days that I've used that with a ton of success. And I've had some days where like I turned it on and then I was like, that thing's dumb, go away. And then gone back to my, social media scrolling. I have found there is a couple of really great apps for like blocking your news feed and stuff like that, which is pretty solid. I have one, I think it's by like Best Self Co., which are like, they're a daily planner company. They have one that's called like Win the Day, and it basically takes over your browsers. If you use Chrome and you click like new tab, instead of it being like a Google window, it's a Win the Day thing. And if you click go, it will block all social media for the timer you tell it. So it'll block, it won't let you access Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and a couple of others. And so I found that one useful on days where like I know I'm really distracted and easily distracted, and I'll just use that. There's also one that I run a lot on my browser, which is called Kill News Feed. It's just a Chrome extension, and Facebook still operates, but you can't see the feed. So you can still use Facebook, like if you have groups and you have things like that you want to continue conversations in, but you can't see your news feed, so the endless scrolling is blocked. So there are a bunch of things like that I find useful, but I mean, overall, it's definitely the hardest, couple of weeks to focus and actually get things done that I've had in 5 years.
I just wanted to say one thing too before I forgot. I think it's really important too to recognize that this is a great opportunity to spend that extra time with your kids, to go for walks, to do all the stuff that we're always too busy to do. Like, I know my kids, I've got 9-year-old twins and a 13-year-old, and, if they want to come over to the shop, I bring them over now and then. But when I'm at home, I've decided that this is the perfect opportunity to, I'm going to play cards with them. I'm going to do drawings. I'm going to just spend a lot of more quality time with them than I usually allow myself to. Because as a small business owner, we all know the stresses that you don't work just 9 to 5. So I found far too often that I wasn't doing things with my kids because I was working at 7 or 8 o'clock at night. And now I think it's a great opportunity to spend that quality time with your family. So don't forget about that side of things too, right? Like, it's a great opportunity to allow yourself to just relax for a little while.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, it's an interesting topic because there's so many different perspectives, and I've worked from home for 2 years now. The first couple years, I hopped between a home office and a co-working office. So for the last 2 years, it's been relatively easy for me in the sense that I'm relatively driven. But then after I hit the 1 year point, it got to be really hard. And so I had to adopt strategies to really help stay productive. And it's hard to even explain what it is. Like, it's not just distraction. Sometimes it's just the lack of other people hustling around you in a similar type of work that's just not there. And that's such a huge inspiration, I find. So I have a schedule and I do schedule everything in terms of meetings and all that. But what I found I had to do in terms of adopting was schedule every task that I had to do. And I'm not the kind of person that's like, oh, let me fit you into a certain hour of the day. But I've had to become that just because being very, very clear on what needs to be done. And so what I did is I created a productivity schedule that I have to fill out every day. There's 3 projects that I can work on to try to accomplish anything beyond 3 decent projects is way too hard. To be honest, you might be lucky to get to the second one. Your brain capacity just can't handle that much stuff. But that doesn't include like junk drawer stuff that would be like a to-do list, right? If you have to send an email and so on, that stuff can certainly be checked off. But in terms of significant progress, there's not more than 3 specific things that you can do. So prioritizing that I found to be really, really important. And then tracking all my time that I'm actually working so that I can reflect and be like, oh, wow, this was a terrible day. Or, oh my goodness, I logged 9 hours today. That was incredible. And then the other thing, there was a podcast I was listening to that encouraged me, and I can't remember which one it was, but there was 2 things that made it incredibly helpful from a psychological perspective. One is, if I could do the day over, what would I do differently? And you fill that out before you even start your day. So, you know, at the end of the day, this must get done. And that can be as simple as like, I need to connect with my wife today, right? Or I need to connect with my kids. Like, it doesn't have to be work related, but you make sure that that happens at some point, and that becomes your top priority, right? The other thing is, what do I get to enjoy today? Because I guess the idea is that we procrastinate because we feel like we're going to lose opportunity for enjoyment. And so if you can identify at the beginning of the day what you actually get to enjoy, then you know that that's already planned and you can focus on buckling down and get to work. And so that's really, really helped me in terms of being very intentional and knowing exactly what has to be accomplished. Because I can have a really priority and tight timeline, but I'm not going to work on it today. It's going to be dealt with tomorrow, right? And when I know that, it gives me the freedom to focus on what needs done today. And so even people that don't have as much profit work or billable hours right now, you need to be that specific on what you're doing, even working on your business. And if you're going to allow for more of that family time during the work hours, then schedule that in. So you have the freedom to be fully engaged with them, right? As opposed to being engaged, but feeling guilty that you're not getting other things done, right? And then being clear on where those things are. Like, after 5:30, I don't spend any time on work right now. That is 100% my wife, my kids, Zooming with friends and family. But what I did to make up for some of that additional time is I get up at 6 a.m., right? I'm not in the 5 a.m. club. I branded my own. It's called 6 a.m. No, just kidding. It's just, yeah. But that's huge for me because when 9 o'clock comes around, I've accomplished 3 hours of work. Or usually I take a half an hour for my own time, and then there's 2 hours afterwards, right? And that is like wind in your sails when everyone else is waking up. The emails start to come in, and you've already got 2-3 hours under your belt, right? And so that was a perspective shift for me. It was a humbling thing, but it's paid dividends since I adopted that.
Yeah, I think one of the things too that I've found, you know, in and out of this last sort of 3 or 4 weeks of trying to adapt to this is that getting up, having a shower, and getting dressed is such a little thing, but it makes you feel so much more prepared for the day. Like, there was a couple of days 2 weeks ago where I was just like, wow, sweatpants and t-shirt it is. I'm comfy. And those are the days that I really struggled with productivity. Like, those were the days where I just wasn't as good as, you know, as I can be and as I know my work should be. And so I, you know, this last sort of 2 weeks, I've got up, you know, like I said, 5 a.m. every day, get my routine done, shower, and get dressed as if I was leaving the house. And I find it just it does make a difference.
Yeah, and let me be clear too, I am not a morning person. So everyone that's saying I can't do it, it sounds good. I am right there with you. I've been there. I am so productive at night, like 10 o'clock, and I am just rolling, steaming ahead. I've had to shift that, just being like, okay, and well, especially with kids and stuff too, right? Like early in the morning, that can be my time, and I'm very, very productive in terms of my thinking work happening then. And I'm convinced I've rewired my brain. It took about a month and a half, but once I got through, I mean, the first couple of days were really hard. The first week was semi-hard, then it got easier. And after a month and a half, I'm convinced I rewired my brain, got used to going to bed early, and waking up early is like, it feels like I've become a morning person, if that makes sense.
It takes, I did a ton of reading on this as I was trying to design my morning routine. It takes 90 days for a habit to become subconscious. And so if you can stick to that 6 a.m. for 90 days, that's where it becomes a subconscious routine versus being a conscious routine. And so when you set new tasks, the first 30 days are motivation, but then the second 30 days, your body will actively try to sabotage yourself because you're now trying to rewrite your subconscious. And it doesn't like that. Your brain doesn't like that. And then the last 30 days are that adapting. Oh God, that just woke up.
Yeah.
The last 30 days are where it becomes a subconscious habit, and then you don't actually have to even think about it. Because I have a really hard time waking up in the dark, and so I bought one of those like Philips light bulb alarm clocks that turns on over a half hour. And I find now most of the time I actually wake up before that initiates anyway. Like I'd wake up somewhere between 4:45 and 4:55 almost naturally every day now, which is good and bad.
That's impressive.
Another small thing that's been helpful, and I did this for other reasons. I did this because I don't want to be attached to my phone. Turn notifications off, everything. I have email and text, that's it. And phone calls. So if I want a notification, I go into the app to check it. But my phone's not telling me that I need something. And yeah, that has been, I don't feel like I'm addicted to social media, but I didn't realize how much I actually was until I turned everything off and was like, oh my goodness.
Yeah, that goes for the smartwatches
so
too.
nice.
I've done the same as I've literally just phone calls and texts now because you see just a little tidbit on your phone and it makes you want to kind of go log in and then you get stuck, right?
Yeah, even most emails, you don't need to respond within the hour, right?
That is so right. Yeah. Okay, let's move on. Thoughts? I think the people that are here are good on this one. So thoughts on launching a new product right now? I think it's fine to launch a new product right now, as long, again, as you're sympathetic in terms of the current climate and not like pushing sales, just being maybe a little bit more creative in terms of like maybe explaining why you decided to launch this product or how it came to be that you decided that there was a need for it. I think it's a good time to launch product. Does anybody else agree, disagree?
It depends. I mean, anytime you're launching a product, you should be clear on how you're serving your audience, right? So that doesn't change anything. But at the same time, be aware of the climate. Some products won't launch right now, right? People don't need it and they won't use it. So yeah.
This question specifically came from a maker.
Okay.
So yeah, I felt like it was appropriate in their terms, but I hear what you're saying. Look, we got Mike's, we got a great photographer here that does product images to the right.
Yeah, I mean, I think like John said, right? It really depends on what it is, and we talked about it before. There are people who still have disposable income, and life is relatively normal, and their income's normal. So depending on if there's a market for what you're making, then yeah, there's no reason to not launch. I mean, I think you have to be really smart about how you launch it now because there's no physical stores, right? There's nowhere to go and purchase things. So depending on what you are as a maker, like you're going to have to get a web store up and you're going to have to think about logistics, right? Because you're shipping everything. And so, not only do you have to think about making something and making it to the standard you expect, but you also now have to deal with FedEx, UPS, Pure Later, Canada Post, and the cost of shipping and the cost of moving things. And if you do have a really great product and people are buying it like crazy, like it is a lot of work to ship 1,000 things a month, right? And so I think it's just being really conscious of what that looks like and what that means. I actually think it's a good time to launch a product if you are solving a problem or you're providing value to people. This is a really great time because your attentions are haven't been this good in a long time. But there's a lot to think about in how you roll that out as well.
Excellent. Okay.
Yeah, there's more rollout, but you can plan to build that into cost, right?
Yes. And to be honest with you, it's kind of business as usual for this person. It's essentially just a new version of something that they were already doing. Let's move on. I'm actually curious to know, I see Rob has a fellow woodworker in the room, and I did receive a question from someone on Instagram, but I didn't take note on who it was. So I'm curious to know if it's you, Andrew. So I'm looking for tips and strategies for pricing jobs. So are you looking to get Rob out of the market or are you looking to compete? anybody here, John, do you have anything in terms of, if I remember correctly, same caliber of the work that Rob is doing, so big custom furniture and that kind of stuff as well?
Yeah, pricing strategies. I mean, those tend to be in many ways a one-on-one kind of conversation because, yeah, I guess what I could say in general, you're probably charging too little. That tends to be the case for most people, because we just are all so sympathetic or apologetic in terms of, oh, there's no way anyone would pay this much money for, you know what I mean? And you devalue yourself. So just know that's how our brains tend to think, except for the people that are out there to scam people. But generally speaking, yeah, and then be focused on value. And the other thing you can, like, I don't know if this applies to woodworking, but how much would it cost you to hire someone of the same caliber as you to make what you make, and then you be able to mark it up and sell it? And generally, that's what you should be paying or charging. Now, that's a huge generalization. And I want to be careful with generalizations here because pricing is, like I said, more one-to-one.
Rob, just let him chime in. I think he wants to say something.
That's Mike. Basically, we're working on, I don't know if it's going to show up, but we're working on these typical. There. This is going to be one of our new products we're going to offer online. So they're going to be serving boards, epoxy, blah, 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 whatever, right? But we figured that this is going to be a good way for us to obviously make some income. And those will sell, thanks, bud. Those will sell to people that we've talked about that, you know, still are working, the essential workers, the government workers. Like, there's tons and tons of people out there that are still working. And if you can, I put it in the comments there, but if you can make a product that can entertain, educate, or cure boredom, this is the perfect time to do it. We're going to sell those, but we're also going to do DIY kits. You know, there's all sorts of things out there for the makers in the community anyway. Tons of options for us. And if anybody's a maker and wants some ideas, you know, shoot me a message. But I think that everybody in every industry, there is something you can do. It's just, you got to think outside of the box now. This isn't normal. You know, this is going to be our new normal. So now's the time to try anything.
Someone's got to come up with a get started backyard vegetable garden kit. How good a time is it to make a little box garden in your backyard, grow some vegetables, and teach the kids, right?
Yeah.
Oh, leave
Absolutely, man. That's a great idea.
Yeah, DIY I think is an easy win in any of those where it's not, maybe you're not creating the thing, but you're supplying the pieces to create the thing and giving instructions so that they can do it on their own. It's also a great way to create user-generated content. You just have them post a picture and tag you in it. I think that's also a good idea. I see
Andrew is still here. I thought you left.
Andrew, was that you that had asked that question? Is there anything more specific that you wanted to touch on that?
I was going to jump in and say that I've seen a couple of other industries doing similar things like that. Like I think it was Skeleton Park's Brewery did like a partnership with Olivea, and they did like a little like make your own meat pie. Like, so it was the ingredients to make the meat pie and a 6-pack of beer for $40 or something like that. Right. So like now is a really good time to sort of get creative. Like, you know, Rob said it in the chat, but like, if you have something that can entertain, educate, or cure boredom, like, you know, make your own meals from restaurants. I am blown away that I have not seen more restaurants doing that, because who better to prepare, you know, the ingredients than those restaurants? I mean, Harper's Burger Bar could do, you know, burger kits. Here's all the ingredients. Cook them at home with instructions. Like, I would buy that stuff every day of the week because, I mean, one, groceries are, you know, logistically challenging right now, depending on where you live. And like, there's a couple of like household staples we need, and Loblaws is kind of where we go for it. The next available date to pick up groceries from Loblaws is currently April 20th.
And no one has eggs.
Oh, that's not true.
I found a farmer.
Yeah.
You found some?
Yeah, on Rhode Island, but
we'll chat later.
Okay.
I'm not going to give away my secret, but there's a grocery store that's been doing a really good job. I currently have 6 dozen eggs in my fridge.
Melissa just
Eating eggs like they're going out of style.
Yeah, and Melissa just raised a good point too. Grocery stores are closed tomorrow and Saturday because it's Easter weekend, right?
More are closed tomorrow and Monday, from what I've seen. And like, so yeah, that's what I've seen a lot. Is a lot are closed for Good Friday and for
Saturday, Sunday, Monday. Yeah.
There's something that you said, Braden, that, you know, that Harper's is a good example and Olivier's a good example. And, you know, so Andrew, for us as woodworkers, you know, you pick a board and so you can do your own charcuterie board at home, and then you pair that with a local winemaker, like, you know, like wine kits or something like that, and a butcher to supply the meat. All three of you can go in on a combo package to offer to people. You know, there's just so many. This is the time where all the small businesses, we need to work together and figure out what we can do with each other to make us all win.
It's a great opportunity also to leverage each other's brand and to gain a new following or new potential customers too, right?
Yeah, and for a consumer to support 3 local businesses for $40, that's pretty epic.
Yeah, I agree. All right, moving on here. We kind of touched on this one a little bit, so I'm going to change the format of it a bit. So can each of the people on the panel give your number 1 productivity tip for working at home since all of this started?
I mean, I already said mine, but I mean, mine has been just morning routine. Mine has been staying, just, you know, really reinforcing that morning routine and trying to make sure that it stays intact, because I feel like if I do it, I have a way more productive day and I stay a lot more focused and I feel better. So for me, morning routine has been key.
Yep. Great. And I would go ahead.
No, mine's going to be real quick because I'm working at my shop, so I don't have too much to say about that. But when I am home doing computer work, let the kids play as much Fortnite as they want.
Definitely seconding early morning, but I would say crystal clear objectives. Be realistic, be crystal clear about them, and get them done.
Yeah, I agree. I'm going to go with time blocking. So picking 2 to 3 things that I want to accomplish during the day and putting them in my schedule and respecting those timelines. We want to bring Mike and Melissa in to get their input on this.
Do. Mike, productivity hack, go.
Mike, where did you start? There she is.
I don't know. The biggest one for me has already been said, getting up and finding your morning routine and going on as if it's, you know, just like every other day. I think that's the easiest, well, maybe not easy, but it's the best way to find normalcy in some of this ridiculousness. I had another one, and of course I can't think of it. Spend some time and try and nail down what the most productive time for you is. I know there's a lot of people out there who, like, they don't hit their stride until 3 p.m, and it's between 3 and 11 at night that they really crush things. For Braden, it's getting up at 5 a.m. because he's a madman, and he just crushes it in the morning, which is great. But I think an important part of this is knowing when you're the most productive, and then you can kind of schedule around that, right? Like, I was up until 3:30 in the morning last night hammering out some website changes and doing a bunch of stuff that I wasn't able to get to earlier in the day. And it's just, it's silly to be up that late, but that's just when I found that I was productive. So I didn't want to put a cap on that and put that to bed and go to bed because I was getting so much done at that time. So I just wrote it out and then got up later in the morning. And luckily we're in a time now where we have the freedom to kind of lean on that a little bit. And if you are a night owl, you can kind of get behind that and get the most out of it.
Go ahead, Melissa. I'm just giving my kids crap here behind me.
Sounds good. Productivity for me lately has been, I don't know, it's been weird. I'm definitely not a morning person, so I'm not getting up early to do work. I've been trying to take this all in stride. So I'm just kind of trying to have it as if I'm having casual days, I suppose. So I'm not waking up early to get work done. I'm just kind of waking up whenever I wake up, and then I head into work, or I'm working from home. For me, I guess I have my list of what I need to get done, and so I don't time myself based on that list other than the deadlines that I have. So for example, trying to figure out trivia questions for Harry Potter, my deadline is by the time Harry Potter trivia starts. So it's more of like a rolling list of stuff that I need to get done. I think one of the hard parts about talking about productivity levels, though, is that you shouldn't be comparing your productivity to other people. There's a lot of online shaming about stuff like this. Like when the amount of posts I've seen that have been basically like, if you can't get your side hustle up, or if you're unable to get all of this work done or lose weight or whatever, it wasn't that you didn't have time, it's just that you're lazy. It's like, oh, we're all trying to also figure out our personal lives through this too. Like even as business owners, although we are trying to figure out how to keep our businesses afloat, I think we're all trying to keep our personal lives afloat too. Like for us, obviously trying to pay some bills here at our business, but also how we're going to budget for groceries at home and stuff. So I guess my productivity is more of like a big shrug. It's more of like, do what you got to do to also keep mentally safe during this pandemic. Like don't put a lot of pressure on yourself, like just survive, really.
Yeah, no, I like that. I think that's really important to mention right now too. I think that covers everybody. I'm just kind of scrolling through the questions again, being respectful of time. So here was another one that I was dealing with, and I'm actually surprised to see that this has 2 votes. I opened a mechanic shop at the beginning of May, and within a week, this all hit. I have no clue what to do. Is anybody else in the chat in that situation where your business literally just launched and within a week shit hit the fan, to say the least?
I'm guessing that means March, right? Because we haven't hit May, at least psychologically.
I always mix those two up. Hold on, let me fix that.
No, just psychologically, I'm not ready for May, so I'm just hoping that.
It was that. I think the date that this person had opened was actually March 9th.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think the thing, of all the businesses that could sort of face an uphill battle, to me, mechanic isn't one, because it is an essential service, right? Like we all still need work done on our cars, and people are still driving. I have to go get groceries, or I need to go run an errand, or I need to go, so I am using my car, obviously less frequently, but like I am using it, and people are going to need oil changes. This is a really great time of year to be like helping people change their tires back from winter to spring. I mean, I think, my advice would be like, how do you build a customer service model that is unparalleled, right? Because, what can be your competitive advantage in the space of being a mechanic? And to me, that is very much customer service. The thing that I hate about getting my car serviced is you always feel like you're going to get screwed, right? You always feel like you're going to get screwed, or you're going to pay too much, or the service isn't going to be good. Like there's just so many mental hurdles about mechanics. And I feel like if you can design and really prioritize that customer service model, I mean, we talked a little bit about it on the first webinar we did, which was like Subaru was doing a pickup drop-off service. You know, and so they're literally going to somebody's house, picking up their car. You know, they have a cleaning protocol in place to make sure that your car is like spotless when it's picked up and dropped off. And you don't even have to think about it. You know, I can imagine, you know, with, you know, over 120,000 people living in Kingston, there's a lot of people with cars, and there's a lot of people that are going to want to get stuff done. And if you can get in front of people and go, hey, I'm going to come to your house, I'm going to pick up your car, we're going to bring it to your shop, we're going to do the service, and we're going to bring your car back. You don't have to think about it. You know, we can do contactless payment or, you know, credit card over the internet. I mean, you can set up a pretty simple portal now to, you know, using Stripe or Square or whatever. Like, I think there's ways to just get really creative. And, you know, maybe Rob can speak to this as well, but it's like, I feel like in industries that are typically more thought of as trades, innovation is typically behind the curve, right? And Rob's a really great example of someone being ahead of the curve when it comes to social media and engaging an audience, because there's not, you know, I can only tell you on one hand the amount of woodworkers I've seen with a really great following and driving really great engagement through their audience. I can tell you that I've never seen an interesting mechanics Instagram page or a, you know, or a drywaller or an electrician or a plumber who was creating a really interesting audience. And, you know, I like to think of myself as a DIYer. And so I can, you know, I can try to tackle a lot of that stuff myself. And, you know, John and I have both talked about it, which is like, if you provide value to people, they're not going to not hire you just because you told them how to do something. They're more likely to hire you because now they see the value in what you bring to the table. And so they can do some pieces of it already. But I think the next step is being able to, you know, being able to hire someone to actually do that service for you. Yeah. Rob,
right. Yeah, what's that?
I just dragged Rob up because I just feel like because I mean, you know, I don't know about your following in general, Rob, but like I'm assuming it's a lot more woodworkers and people in the trades are probably a larger percentage of your audience. And like, do you see a lot of people creating the content and engaging in the way you do? Because I haven't seen it much before in the trades in general.
The woodworking community on Instagram, I'd say middle of the road as far as following goes. Yes, a lot of my followers are fellow woodworkers and stuff, and it's funny. Like I'll condense this real short. Long story short, I got my start and help to where I'm at now from other woodworkers on Instagram, and now I've become one of the people that newer people ask for advice and tips and tricks. So it's kind of like I've grown into that spot where I used to ask. So it's definitely a very interactive community. I really do think it's funny, like talking about mechanics, I think they'd make a great Instagram page. I think like stories on, you know, brakes and engine, just a content that they could film. And I've seen, it's funny actually, I follow a mechanic on TikTok who explains everything that he's doing, puts it to music, and it's awesome. Like, and his following, I think he has like 300,000 people that follow him on TikTok. And so there's a huge opportunity for sure. Now more than ever, with everybody sitting at home on their phones, what are we all doing? We are all on social media all the time. So this is the perfect opportunity to get yourself out there. I think this is a really good opportunity to actually grow your accounts fairly quickly, just because there's so many more people, so many more eyeballs on their phones all the time. It's a really good opportunity, and people that, you know, don't know how to start or where they should begin, you just introduce yourself, introduce your product. You know, the way that I use my social medias, mainly Instagram's the main one. I try and keep my feed to my work, whether that's processes or final products. And then my stories, it's me. It's how we do it. It's me at home with my kids. It's my life away from work as well as work. And that's how people know who I am. And that when you come up and you see me in the street, I'm the same guy that you see on Instagram. And I think it's a huge, huge opportunity right now for people to jump on if they felt like I'm too late to it. It's never too late to start and take the opportunity.
I think that's great. I think where the fear comes in is like literally just signed a 5-year lease and is a sole proprietorship. So be personally liable to pay that rent. So it'll be interesting again to circle back to a conversation we had earlier in terms of what type of relief, or will there be some sort of legislation that comes into play to let people out of their lease after a certain amount of time, even if they were locked in for whatever reason before all of this happened.
I think it's one of those times too where landlords, like for the mechanic's instance, I don't know where his location is or whatever, but I'm sure the landlord would rather, and Dave spoke about this in a couple episodes ago, have a real conversation with your landlord and say, look, this is where we're at. Everybody knows the situation. Would you rather have an empty building at the end of this, or would you still rather have me here?
Yeah, and the scary
like,
thing
can I
about
give
that,
you
Rob, is
half rent for now?
right. Landlords actually get incentives for having vacant businesses, so that's kind of scary too for some. I know specifically downtown, if your space is vacant, yeah, they actually get money, some sort of relief for having vacant space. So this one is actually located out by Racks, and yeah, there was an opportunity for him to reconnect with a past employer and potentially have some work siphoned to him. It's really about just kind of letting people know that he exists and that he's there, because really I want to go to my mechanic right now. I'm not looking for a new mechanic. I'd rather support my little mom and pop shop that I go to, you know? Well,
then this is another perfect opportunity. Like if you throw $20 in Facebook ads, you know, like the return on a Facebook ad compared to anything else you're going to spend is pretty good. Like I've thrown, the most I've ever put on a campaign is $50, and I've gotten a fair bit of inquiry from it. You know, if I make one sale from that, obviously it's paid itself off. It's a great opportunity. Like I said, everybody's on their phones right now, and you know, I guess spend what you can to get your name out there.
Yeah, I challenge you to create some sort of package geared towards small business owners, because they're in a lot of pain right now. So how can you target them and potentially bring some of those people to you as another small business? Braden, did you have something you wanted to add? Okay, let's move on. I'm trying to cover all of these questions here. We have another question, and I totally wrote your name wrong. I'm going to fix it, from David Yateman. Any advice on starting a YouTube channel with stock 360 footage from my hard drives? Does anybody have any experience on YouTube?
I almost wonder, would he be further ahead? Mike, you might know more about this, but would it be further ahead to put something like that up on Shutterstock?
Stock photography is a disaster. I just out of, so here's an example. Just out of sheer curiosity, I put some images up on Adobe's stock website, and put them up full res. They're decent stock photos. One of the biggest things I found was they're very, very critical of what images they take. If there is any any branding in it, it's thrown out. If there's anything recognizable in it, it's thrown out. If there's any copyright, it's thrown out. Like, just getting images on the site is a little bit of a task to begin with. Now, as a product photographer, that was a little more extensive for me. But things like if your content has a billboard with Mercedes on it, they might not take it because of that clip of a copyrighted billboard or whatever. Who knows? And then on top of that, I have actually sold a few images. Unless you are uploading constantly and getting downloads on a regular basis, it's unlikely that anybody's going to see your content. And I've sold a handful of images, and I make like 10-20 cents per image. So if it's costing you, 3 or 4 hours of time or actual money to create this content, and you're making 10 cents per sale, when the people who are downloading it might be making hundreds of dollars. I actually did a reverse search and tracked down where my images were being used. And it came from a company that does like wall decals and stuff like that. So they would print my image massive on a wall. And they're probably making hundreds of dollars on that image, and I made 10 cents. So I personally hate stock avenues because the creator of the image is always the one who gets screwed every single time. So it's kind of sad just that the industry has gone that way. So I mean, it's worth exploring. Like 360 might be, maybe it's different because it's newer and not many people are doing that, or I don't know. It's hard to say. My experience has not been good. A lot of other people's experiences have not been good. So I would tread lightly with the stock side of things.
So I know that David has made some money selling stock images on some of those sites. This question in particular, though, relates to YouTube content.
I mean, it sounds like he wants to create a YouTube channel, and I would just say do it. I mean, there's no... Is just uploading content, right? And if people are interested in 360 stuff, they'll look at it. I mean, you got to make content. Man, after me today. I mean, if you have to make if you're going to make content, you got to put it somewhere. And like, to me, there's no point in, well, I guess there's a point. For us, there's a point in capturing footage because there are times when we will need it in the future. But, if you want to promote, if you want to promote your 360 videos, I would just start uploading things. And, it might really be an opportunity to like get yourself on camera and explain what you're doing, like, because this is a good time to sort of build an audience. And, I'm assuming your end goal is wanting to get more people to hire you to do 360. So, if you can talk about philosophy, or you can talk about, why you're doing 360 the way you are and what you're showing, like, you can create that demand for it. But I would just start uploading stuff. I mean, you've got to hit YouTube every day with new content if you want to build an audience, right? Same with like social media and Facebook and Instagram. Like, if you want the algorithms to think of you favorably, you need to be posting new content every day. So like, I would spend a couple weeks just making, 150 videos, something like that. But then you can just start to roll them out, and you can just schedule them to go and go and go and go, and then finding ways to use that, right? Like there's a few different platforms that are like more 360 specific, and if you can find ways to incorporate VR and stuff like that, there's some creative ways you can sort of start to build an audience. But really the basis comes from personality and from posting frequency, and so those two things you have to really take on for you to be able to build an audience.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he already has close to 150. I feel like he's recording all day, every day, based on his Instagram. I think this is also an opportunity, because you got to realize a lot of people are struggling even to understand how they could use 360 in their business or in their daily lives. I think it's a good opportunity to, again, we're talking about educating your audience, but to plant the seed in terms of how can a woodworker use 360 easy, a 360 shot of their shop, or a cabinet maker, a 360 model of their shop room, or whatever that it may be, right? Yeah, he's got a ton of courage. David, the answer is just do it. There you go.
Well, I mean, the thing is too, I think that goes to the productivity thing you were talking about earlier. Like, if you got up in the morning, said, you know what, at 10 o'clock every day I'm going to upload one of those, like, very end of the day, you have a great portfolio later on down the road to send people to. And yeah, but the education side of it would be fantastic, because I've seen your 360 stuff and it's cool. I don't know how I'd apply it here, so teach me. Teach me why I should hire you to come do it. And I like you too.
That's great. Okay, moving on. David, I hope we answered that. If you have any follow-up questions, just get them down there in the chat. For companies that are still able, this one's from Mike, for companies that are still able to operate under the social distancing guidelines, how do you navigate to find work when everyone is scared to spend money? Mike, we already answered this. Seriously, yeah. This is your question? People have money to spend right now. We live in a government town. There is money to be spent.
Okay, so
and business as usual. You can use a photographer.
We always kick Mike's butt on this, but you need to go and talk to the brands that have money, right? Like there are, if you look at your watch portfolio and you track down the CMO or the brand manager or whoever from 10 watch companies that you really like and just start knocking on doors. I mean, you're not going to get anyone no one's going to reach out in this market. No one is going to reach out right now and go, I'm going to spend money on photography or video or storytelling, right? I think right now is where we have to be proactive as content creators, and we have to go and knock on doors and see where we can provide people value. And like the brands that we work with and the brands that you should be working with and the brands that John works with, most of them are doing pretty good. They might be down a bit, but they're not afraid to spend money right now. We have a couple of clients that are tourism brands, and like we know no work for 2020. But there are a lot of other brands that we work with that, they're trying to figure out, how do we shift online? How do we start to sell things? I think there's a huge opportunity out there if you can start to provide value. And it's just going to involve knocking on a lot of doors. And, like with any creative endeavor, it's like a dating app, right? It's like mostly rejection. And then every now and then someone will say yes.
So like swipe, I don't know if it's left or right. And then all of a sudden,
so you're saying
find 100 watch companies and just keep swiping right. And then
you're saying jump on Tinder and
you need business Tinder and you got to start swiping.
Wait, that's innovation. Someone's going to do that.
Yeah, he wants to make an app with me.
No, I think that's fair. What is it, Binder? Is that what we're calling it? You better trademark that, Rob. All right. Mike, did we answer your question? Did we give you a good enough lecture on that one?
I don't know. I've always had a hard time tracking down businesses that I feel need my services, right? Because a lot like when you Google watch companies, the companies that are coming up are Rolex, Patek Philippe, like, all of these multi-million-dollar companies. The companies that I need to get in touch with are the people who are doing a less than great job on their marketing. So it's harder to find those smaller niche companies that would be an ideal fit for me in particular. So I think for me, I just have a hard time spending hours on Google and finding maybe one company that's even worth reaching out to. I'm yet to find a way to streamline that kind of search.
LinkedIn. LinkedIn will tell you that if that person is on LinkedIn and you Google that company, it will tell you their position and it will tell you how long they've worked at the company. And you can even see if they've worked their way up the ladder from being like a customer sales and then VP and then president and then owner. You can see all of that stuff.
Yeah, finding the person to reach out to in the company is easy through LinkedIn. I'm talking about finding the brands that would be an ideal fit for me to reach out.
I mean, the other thing you got to think about too, and I mean, we do this all the time, which is like, what are the brands who are that big, who do already have product photography, and you could do it better? Like, I mean, I think that's also not a thing to be afraid of, right? I mean, we we tell a lot of companies who think they're good at storytelling that they're not good at storytelling. Not a great,
I have a hard time doing that.
It's not always the best introduction, but the people that are okay with that also aren't our clients, right? Like the ones that are like, oh, we're doing fine. You're like, cool, like we're not the right fit for you, right? And like if you get into some of the positioning experts, John lives by Blair Enns and the Two Bobs guys, but like they'll tell you want to isolate 90% of the audience. You want 90% of the market not to like you, right? So that 10% that do want to work with you absolutely love you and will pay a premium for that expertise. And I sent you a couple.
Which is a hard thing to shift out of. If your personality is that of somebody who craves making everybody happy.
Well, yeah, it's just never going to happen, though.
Yeah.
That's entrepreneurship 101.
That type of personality, but I mean, to be an expert and to be as good, to be really good at what we do. I mean, I think from a photography perspective, your work is as strong or better than ours is in our industry. I'm just more willing to fight people, I guess, right? And I think
that's a huge compliment, actually. I appreciate that.
But like, you in our industry, you're going to have to get past rejection quickly because most of our conversations are either us saying no to someone or someone saying no to us. And then somewhere in the overlap of those two bubbles, right in the middle, is clients. And clients we have really great relationships with and are going to pay a premium to work with us. And we're going to work our butts off to do really amazing things for them. But like that little tiny overlap is like, that's where we want to be. And as a product photographer, I mean, you look at other product photographers around the world, right? And they have a pocket of people they work with who really believe in them and they do exceptional work for those people. And you've got to knock on enough doors that you start to eliminate the other two outsides of that and start to find the middle. And I say anyone creative, right? Josh in the chat, it's the same thing for graphic designers and for illustrators. It's like, if you want to do really epic, really high paying work, you've got to be polarizing to an extent. You've got a very strong opinion on photos on white backgrounds and things like that. So
as John mentioned, stock photography.
And stock photography. Yeah. I mean, where's the
Mike? You need to be a photographer that can do something like that. Oh, wait a minute.
Weird. I know a guy who can do stuff like that.
Okay, we'll chat with you offline,
Yeah.
Mike. We're going to get back to the questions here. But
Yeah.
yes, Josh, thanks for chiming in on that because you're absolutely right. And Jada, you too. Never assume that people don't have money. Let's see. What can we fly through here? How are people reacting to the new services way? This is actually more a question for the audience. How are people reacting to the changes that you've made, if you've had to make any, into the businesses since all of this began? If anybody wants to put an answer in on the corner, and if anybody on the panel has anything to chime in about that. I mean, I know Braden, I'll give you a little plug here because you probably won't give yourself a plug, but Visit Kingston released a video that you worked on specifically focused on what's happening right now. And the response has been crazy. I'm sure you've gotten a lot of messages or people are tagging you in their messages and stuff like that. So like how did that come about? Did Visit Kingston approach you or did you go to them and were like, hey, we need to do this?
No, we really like working with Visit Kingston and Tourism Kingston because they're really smart, right? And they're a really great example. I put on my LinkedIn, like when this sort of first started, like, the first inklings of shutdowns. And it was like, if you have in-market ads on any platform from a week ago, like shut it down, right? Because anything you have going out that's not, looking at what's happening now is going to be super tone deaf, and you're just not going to look good. And Tourism Kingston and the Visit Kingston brand right away pulled all their marketing. Right, they pulled down all of the 25 things to do in Kingston, all of those elements, and they reinvested what they had put forward already into the Together at Home campaign, which was basically they built a landing page inside their makers portal, and they really wanted to do something to like create content that encouraged people to just stay at home and also try to stay together. So it was like, I don't know, a week or two ago now, they came to us and we're like, we want to create something that makes people feel something about Kingston, but doesn't in any way encourage them to travel, right? Because the worst thing they could do right now is encourage travel, right? Don't come to Kingston and don't leave your house, right? Like those are sort of two really good things to encourage right now. And so when they came to us, they were like, well, how can we film this? What are our options? We want to create something. We've got a connection with the HIP that we can see if they like the project and if they would want to extend us a license. And so they started working on that. And like, it was like 5 a.m. on a Sunday, I started writing a script. And so, I pushed them to go like, if we are going to create something like this, we really need to find like the common conflict. Like, what is everyone feeling? What is the environment everywhere? And so we really wanted to make sure that we did still create a narrative and we did still create something that made people feel something. And so we wrote the script. We also put out a call to the community for submissions. And then instead of what we already want to do, which is go film something and leave the house, like Brody and I are clamoring to do, we went, even us filming something is going to look better than it should based on the current climate. And it looks irresponsible for a tourism brand, and it looks irresponsible for us to go out and film something. So we basically wrote like a how to submit video to us, right? And it was like we sent that to the mayor and the MP and the MPP and Kirk Muller and Jana Hefford and Gord Sinclair, and it was like, this is what we want you to do. Are you up for doing it? All of them said yes, which was great. And then it was like, this is how to film something. So hold your camera sideways, and so then we had them and all the community members submit all those words and the sentences we had scripted. None of the words, so none of the community elements were scripted. Those were all genuine from the community. And then the what we were calling like the recognizable local figures, we wrote those. And then we've been shooting for tourism for 5 years, so we had a ton of footage that we could dig through. And before this sort of most recent shutdown, like the all non-essentials were closed, Brody and I had gone out for a day and we were in Kingston, Belleville, and Brockville, and we were just driving around with a camera out the window and just documenting, right? We're documentary style filmmakers, and we were like, well, it's a really important thing to be capturing right now because, with any luck, this is a once in a lifetime thing, right? And so we wanted to be really aware of, we need to be documenting this and we need to be thinking of things. And so just by happenstance, we had that footage from going out a few days earlier. We had the script and the submissions, and then we had the tourism footage, and then the HIP did give us that license. So, it was really just sort of an exercise in how do we be nimble and creative and do something in a different way than we would normally do it. And we have to change our offering, and we have to, really live by our belief in storytelling, which is like, regardless of the quality of the video, if the story is strong, people will watch. And it's at like 95,000 views in 2 days now, and over 2,500 shares, which, and that's all been organic. They haven't put a paid campaign behind it yet. And so, that has a bigger reach than a lot of the work we've done in the past for them. And it's because the story resonated with people, and, and there was that sort of common audience. And so I think there was a lot of power in it, and not really stripping out the classic tourism call to action, right? And just making it a piece about the community really resonated with people. And so, yeah, it's just getting creative with how you do the thing you do.
Yeah, you'd almost think that it's not your first rodeo.
Oh.
Jade is actually asking a great question here. She's curious to know if she's allowed to share on social media. Jade, are you referring to specifically through the CFIB channels or through your personal channel? Mine. Yeah. A lot of people are sharing it. I mean,
Of course.
I think it's, yeah, of course, share it. Do it. My kids are throwing paper airplanes above my head. It's just getting
My
this-
stairs to my left are covered in paper. They've been throwing them this whole webinar. It's been great.
Andrew's got another great question here. Thought on Instagram ads. I've never run them. If anybody follows Gary Vee, he says it's where you should be putting your money right now. I don't have experience in that. Anybody have experience on IG ads?
I mean, I would say run them. I mean, so when we've run them before, they're just run through Facebook, right? Because Facebook runs Instagram. So for us, if we boost a post or something like that, it actually runs across all the network. Like it runs across Instagram and it runs across Facebook, and like I feel like that's sort of the smartest ad buy because you can run them across both. I really do look like Al Borland today. Now that I see the name. At one point, John and I were both on, and we're both wearing red flannel today, and it's a very Canadian webinar. Yeah, I mean, I would say, right now is a really good time to test things, Andrew. Like the audience is there, the engagement is higher. I think the one thing you're going to find is the ads are more expensive now because a lot of people are running them because that intention is higher. So your per click cost is going to be a little bit higher, but yeah, I think they're worth exploring and they're worth investing in. And I think with most marketing and with most things, it's worth trying. That's my kid.
I thought I heard some liquid spilling, but it might be your background. I don't know. A few other things here. Dealing with temporary closure of my business so that I can be eligible for the government benefits. We kind of touched on that earlier in term. I had made the comment about maybe not posting too publicly that you're closed for business, and then we did talk about some of that. Do you know any other resources, funding options outside of the news stuff that may help us during this time? An amazing resource. Now would actually be a really good time for you to get comfortable with the portals that explain funding. I can share a few. MentorWorks is actually a company that they're not government funding body, but they will help people apply for grants, and they take their cut if you're successful in getting the grant. So it'd be a great time to familiarize yourself with the MentorWorks website and some of I think the other one's the Canada Business Ontario has great resources too. There may be stuff that's still being delivered. I mean, we are just getting ready. April 1st was a new fiscal for a lot of those programs. I say it's worth calling maybe your local economic development or a CFDC if you're in a rural area to see if they have anything. I was on a few calls where it looked like they were trying to shift the target of some of those to be more relief and sustainability focused. Usually you won't get a grant if it's to sustain your business. I think it's worth looking into them and seeing if there's anything that kind of piques your interest that you may qualify for. Again, I can't speak to whether or not they're processing anything at this time. How do I approach taking a break? I feel like I'm always on and want to create some balance. I think just do it. Just stop. Just take the break. Check out. Anybody else have anything on that?
Others probably do, but I think I was talking with John Sanfilippo yesterday, and he was saying that he's just been scheduling time away from his desk and from work, right? Like having that list of a couple of things you really want to get done one day, and also just being willing to go and not do something for 2 hours. I was just on I can't remember who I was how my days are going. I don't remember who I was talking to this morning, but I was on a call with someone and they were like, I woke up today and I got dressed and then I thought, I don't want to be dressed today. And I put on my PJs and I decided that outside of the call with me, they were watching Netflix today. And it was just one of those where it was like, it's totally fine, right? Like, I think we all have a lot we can keep ourselves busy with. And I think in any business, I can work 16 hours a day, no problem, because I like what I do and I like my business. But I'd go insane if I did that, right? And so I think it's just, being realistic with this scenario and being willing to just schedule some time where you're not actually working.
Yeah, and John makes a great point in here too. Schedule it in and don't forget your meals. Balance is planned, not natural. Yeah, also super important to eat right now. It's funny, Rob, that you mentioned take a break, have a Kit Kat, but I've resorted a lot to sugar in the last few weeks. Anybody else have anything, any final questions, or anybody on the panel have anything else that they feel they could leave a little inspiration to the people that are still hanging in there listening, or maybe the people that are going to listen a little bit later when they watch the recording? I think we're good.
I think the biggest thing right now is like, you know, there's definitely a lot of things that we can worry about and spend a lot of mental energy on. But I think the thing to really focus on right now is like, what are the things you can do each day to make your business a little bit better, and not think too broadly or set ambitions too high about, you know, trying to achieve metrics or trying to meet your sales goals that you set in January, or like things like that. Like, it's a time to sort of slow down, and to just do little things that can make a positive impact each day in your business. And, you know, I've set myself a whole bunch of business building tasks and tasks, and that's what we're spending all of our time doing, right? Because work is getting quieter, and we have more time and more energy to dedicate to the business, which we haven't really worked on in 5 years. And so now it's time to go and focus on those things, and we're going to develop a bit of a sales strategy, and we're going to figure out how do we tactfully reach our audience, and how do we start talking to the people that we want to be working with. And I figure, you know, right now is probably the easiest time to go and ask the people we were afraid of asking to work with us. Because, you know, like I said to Mike before, which, like, what's the worst that's going to happen? They're going to say no. And then we're going to move on, and we're going to go to the next one. And so, you know, we're going to take some of that to heart and really start to try to target the projects and the brands that we really want to work with. Because, you know, I think if anything, a pandemic puts everything in perspective. And if you're not happy with the work you're doing, and you're not happy with who you're doing it with, now's a really great time to influence that and put our head down and try to change that. So that's kind of what we're doing.
I agree. I think we need to look inside the business too right now. It's not just what's forward facing. I also think it's a great time to reflect, and you kind of touched on that a little bit, but if you look back at some of the things that maybe haven't been working in your business, or maybe you tried some things that you were really hoping would be more successful, and you have more time now to maybe try those things again, I think it's a great opportunity to look at some of that and how you can improve them and make them better. And maybe people will be more attracted to it right now. So get rid of things that are taking up your brain space, whether it be you really wanted to work with a specific brand, and just reach out to them. Because if it's a no, then that's just going to free up some brain space for you to let 2-3 more brands pop into your head. And then you just kind of tackle those. I think it's one day at a time. We're all trying to figure this out at the same time. Ask your colleagues and your peers that are working in your industry, or even people that are outside of your industry, if they have any ideas for you to do. And just, John, you nailed it. Just trek on. There's only so many things that any of us can do right now working remotely, but there's so much opportunity. There's so many opportunities right now. It's unbelievable. I don't want to just keep it that everybody's going to survive this, because a lot of people are not going to survive this. And I think it's important to just kind of be realistic about that too. I'm not a believer in setting a timeline or a deadline as to when you need to make a decision, if you're in or if you're out. I think if you're in right now, you need to stay in, and you need to keep trying to trek on until it's clear as day that you just got to kind of throw in the towel. All right, deep breath. That's actually something I'm going to say. I took a deep breath 2 or 3 days ago and was like, I can't remember the last time I took a deep breath. And it was like, you took another one. There's certainly some power there. So I think if you need a minute, take a deep breath, and just kind of do what you got to do for you in the moment, what's going to help you the best. Rob wants you to follow him on TikTok. I'm sure it's easy to find him. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining in today in the conversation. We will be sharing some news very shortly in terms of kind of what's next. We do plan on going live again next week. We need to have some conversations in terms of the team on that, probably dropping things down to once a week. So if you have any topics or anything that you would love for us to touch on and maybe dig a bit deeper in terms of one topic per session, that's the direction that we're looking at going in right now. So we'd love to hear from you, and we will see you all soon. Take care, everybody. Bye.